Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to the Drafting of the Circuits program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk over racing this week. Joining me in the studio, I've got my regular panelists, Luis, Torres, and Richard Youden. How we doing, fellas?
Very good, thank you.
It's going.
It's going. Yep, that's all I expect from you, Luis. You're never too happy, never too sad. Mediocre, Luis. We love you, man. So we also have.
I get it's better to be neutral than south. Or
there you go. There you go. All right, so I am very excited for this week's show because I've got a couple of special guests here. I've got Stephanie Throckmorton and her husband, Bill Throckmorton, and they are the owners of the Top Gun Racing IndyCar team, and they will be competing at the IndyCar race at the Brickyard Weekend coming up here in a couple of weeks with their driver, RC Enerson. So, Stephanie, Bill, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Good to be on here with you guys. And sounds like it might be a lot of fun tonight. Interesting.
Now, you guys initially had hoped to hit the track in 2020. You had big plans, and like a lot of people in a lot of different industries, their plans were put on ice and shelved due to COVID-19 shutdowns and quarantines and these sort of things. So you guys kind of had to take a step back and get back to 2021, try to get going. You guys were able to participate in some preseason testing. You were at Indianapolis. Unfortunately, came up a little short in the last row shootout. You had to go up against guys like Will Power in the last row shootout. But now coming up here in a couple of weeks, you'll be taking RC to the Indianapolis road course, where you'll absolutely, barring anything happening to the car, you'll absolutely get a start. So I guess you guys are pretty excited. Yeah,
definitely. We're basically, we've been getting ready for the road course. We leave Monday. Everybody is heading out to Sebring, and we're doing a test on Wednesday. And we should be back by Friday, and then we'll basically be prepping and getting ready for the Speedway.
Okay, now I know that I've been reading up on you guys here, so I know that Stephanie, you were a track announcer for a local bull ring, which is pretty cool. So you've been in racing a long time, and Bill, I found out that you've come from a racing family. Now, myself, I love racing because I had that cool uncle who was a race car driver, and Bill, you also had a cool uncle, and your uncle was Grant King of Grant King Racers, the guy he was a car builder, fabricator, team owner. He ran the Kingfish chassis at Indianapolis. He also sprints in midgets, a lot of stuff, very active during the early USAC days. And then your aunt, Doris King, was pretty much the team manager. She took care of the finances, the sponsorship, those sort of things. So is that what kind of got you that love of racing, having that cool uncle?
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, I've grown up in it. I've never ever been away from racing. So from the day I was born, I always remember being around race cars, and Grant pretty much raised me. I lived with him, and I worked for him, and I drove for him, and Doris is still alive. Grant passed away in '99. Doris is still alive, and it's kind of funny because a lot of people nowadays that knew Grant and Doris call Stephanie and I Grant and Doris because we're kind of a lot alike. So it's definitely kind of interesting. But the more I think about it, we are a lot alike, like Grant and Doris. So it's interesting anyway.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Now, Stephanie, you and I got to talking over the sponsorship campaign you're doing, which was based on Doris King idea from 1975, The Spirit of Indiana, where she sold small blocks of sponsorship on the car. You guys have everything from just individuals, local businesses, Facebook groups that are putting their name on there. So it's going to be pretty neat to see, just that grassroots, and just, for me, the little bit I donated with my friends that pooled money, I'm just proud to say, hey, that's our group on an IndyCar in a race. Pretty neat to say that. So, but
I myself, I think it's really neat, and kudos to Elite IndyCar, that group. I mean, they've reached out, and, oh my gosh, in a matter of a day, you guys went absolutely nuts and pulled everything together. And I mean, that's what it's all about. We're regular people that are running an IndyCar. We'll talk to you. You can come up, you can call us, you can come over and see our shops. We enjoy the race fans, but we deal with race fans every day. And I think it's just a great way for a lot of people to be able to get their name or be on an IndyCar, because most of the time you couldn't do that for the spot for 50 grand. So we're making that area where it's available to different people. And some of the people we've talked to that have done it, they're so excited. We're excited to have them on there. And Stephanie has set up one of the days before the Grand Prix, I think that Tuesday, what's the date on that? Wednesday, August 11th, where anybody that's got a brick is going to come by. We're going to have RC here. We're going to show them around the shops, and they can get a picture right there with RC, the IndyCar, and their livery on the race car, which I think is pretty neat nowadays, because you won't do that anywhere else.
Yeah, racing is very, very corporate these days, and very, and some of these shops are very, very closed. Some are, you can look a little bit here and there, but for the most part, unless you got some money or you're working in the sport, they don't want you in that garage. So it's just really neat that you guys are offering this sort of thing to just to pretty much fans, which is fans make the sport to begin with. So let's talk about your team a little bit. Obviously, you're competing against some heavy hitters, Penske's, Ganassis, guys like that, and you're doing so without a technical alliance, which is an uphill battle for sure. But what's the size of your team? How many folks are you employing right now?
Well, there's 5 full-time people on the IndyCar team. Roy Wilkerson's our chief mechanic. Bridget, we have a young lady that's our lead mechanic, and she's learning and she's doing well. She does our gearbox. Jim Thomas, he has helped me on my race cars for the last 20 something years. We've got Dwight Brown. He's been an engineer for several teams, and he does a wonderful job. Stephanie and I will jump in and do everything that we can. And then we have a lot of weekend warriors, and we do it on a budget, but we're building, and we actually have a lot of equipment, for where we started. Definitely, we're building up. We're working really hard at it, and we're trying to get some larger sponsors, and the whole goal is to run more and more races.
Yeah, I guess. Are you eventually hoping to build yourselves up to a full season?
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, and you want to run a full-time season, and you want to build up to a second car, and we have a second car, but a second team driver, and it just takes time and a lot of money, and it's a lot of work, and we still basically we run 3 businesses at the same time out of these buildings.
When do you guys sleep? So let's talk about your driver, RC Enerson, because I think this kid is pretty darn talented. I thought he was phenomenal in the Formula 2000 series, and he was pretty darn good in lights. He's had a couple of IndyCar starts, and he's shown some tremendous promise. And also his dad Neil has been very involved. I think Neil actually owned the lights team for a while. How's RC working out for you guys? Is he as enjoyable to work with as I imagine that he must be?
All I can tell you is that kid, I can't work for any kid his age. Just to demeanor, his humbleness, his talent goes a long way. But as a I guess a motherly figure, for him to be, I'm definitely old enough to be his mother. I couldn't ask any more for a kid on or off the track. Unbelievable. But his talent is clearly hasn't been seen yet. Unfortunately, like I said, the 500 effort was best that we could do in a 38-day turnaround, but we're only 1 mile off, 1 mile per hour off. And very proud of that. Obviously, we wanted to start the race, but that kid gave it all. If you watch the telemetry, we did everything to that car. We just need a little bit more So, I mean, he's just an all-around good kid.
He's not a prima donna by any means, and we actually made him take his pickup truck and a trailer and bring stuff back, and we make him work right beside us. So it's that's another rare deal, because I don't think you'll see another IndyCar driver doing that. So good kid, think the world of him. His dad's a good guy. I liked the kid. I liked his talent. We went after him, and we did a rare deal. The kid is pretty much he's a hired gun. He's not coming in here and dropping $2 million.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, is Neil involved with the team as well, or is he just kind of there for support?
Neil really, he keeps off to his side and kind of stays out of it. And me and him are pretty good friends, and he helps us out on a few things. But all in all, I mean, Neil has brought RC along. RC's got a ton of talent, and I really want to build up and work with the young man.
I don't blame. Now, Louise, you've got a question on this topic?
Yeah, the question I had was a follow to what you said about RC being hands-on with the car. Do you feel like this day and age is a lost form in open wheel racing, or just motorsports in general? Because it's gratifying to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare. It really is. And, RC gets the car. He understands it. Technology wise, he's right there. He understands what our engineers are trying to do. He's good to work with, and that's rare. A lot of kids really don't have the knowledge yet to what it takes or the language to be able to jump in and start working right off the bat. Yeah. And he's there.
Yeah, I think it's across every series. I mean, I've worked with a number of drivers that you just want to throttle them half the time, because they've got this arrogance and this air about them that they just don't want to be there, and they think they know better. And to hear some of the stories there that you're passing on there, it's fantastic to see there's a young kid out there that is prepared to do his dues and put the hard work in and earn the respect of the people around him. Because there's so some of the drivers I've worked with, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah, and there's no need for that, honestly.
No. And
everybody puts their pants on the same way.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Grant King Racers, the shop and museum. Obviously, you told me you restore a lot of the old Kingfish chassis and the sprint and midget cars there, and you do have a bit of a museum there. So talk to me a little bit about this. I know this is open to the public, is it not?
Yeah, we prefer that you give us a call or contact us. And that's simple. I mean, Stephanie, she's the pretty one, and most people like talking to her or hanging out around her than anybody else around here. So, I mean, she's really good with it. We do a lot of customer cars. We do a lot of the vintage IndyCars events, and we have customers that will go and run their cars for them and help them. So yeah, we're into the racing history, and it's our daily lives. But I think right now we've got like 22 cars in here, and there's only one car that's not a Grant King car. We have everything from IndyCars to midgets, sprint cars, you name it. And we actually have the very first car that Grant built when he came to the States in Idaho in 1962, before he went to work for Rolla Bolstead and then Granatelli, and then started his own team in 1970.
Yeah. Now the early Kingfish cars, the ones in the 70s, were pretty much, as I gather, just reading some history. Oddly enough, 1975 was just a little bit before my time, just a little bit. I started watching racing in about 78, 79. But I guess from what I'm reading, the Kingfish cars were very similar and nearly every bit as good as like a Gurney Eagle. But you could get one for a whole lot less than a Gurney car.
Well, I think back then Dan was selling his for 50 grand, which was a bunch back then. And Grant claimed that he could build the same thing for 6 to 8 grand, but those were our house cars in-house here. And, they ran up front. Tom Sneevil was driving for him when Penske hired him. Steve Krisloff. He had some really good runs with them, and they were basically a Gurney Eagle copy, the Kingfishes were. And he did so well at it that Dan Gurney couldn't keep up with all the spare wings and uprights and the spare parts. So he ended up buying a lot of the parts from Grant and for the Gurney Eagles.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I was looking over the list of drivers that have driven either, for Grant King Racers or driven the Kingfish cars. And it's just reads like a who's who of Indianapolis royalty. Al Unser, Tom Sneva, like you said. I want to say Mario Andretti drove a Kingfish in the Pikes Peak Hill climb.
He drove the Granatelli Grant King Champ dirt car, and Grant and Mario were pretty good friends, and along with Billy Foster back in the day, and Billy's the gentleman that got killed in a stock car out at Riverside, and Mario said he'd never have another race driver friend again. So
I've heard that story. Yeah. Now Billy Foster, he was from Canada.
Yes, sir.
As was Grant King and Rolla Volstad, I believe.
Well, Rolla was from Portland area.
Okay.
But the Great Northwest, it wasn't that far away. And a lot of those guys raced together with the Camera Series, Canadian American Racing Series, which Dick Simon came from. All the Snevas ran up there. A lot of good racers came from the Great Northwest.
Absolutely. Now, Richard, you have a question or two?
Yeah, it's obviously you've got sort of the sort of history there, and the sort of the family sort of name to that. I guess that's quite unusual these days, but I imagine that's something you're trying to preserve, that sort of mentality and almost like old school way of doing things.
Oh, most definitely. We work hard at that, and Stephanie tries to tie everything into our racing heritage from the shops, and she does some really neat stuff. But we run it, the race cars. There's no rule that we have to be like everybody else, and that doesn't mean that we can't be just as good.
No.
And I tell you what, we have created, or we have gathered a great fan base, and we absolutely enjoy people, and we enjoy the fan base, and it makes you feel good because we're not rich people. We just work really hard, and it's something we want to get back to. We had cars in the race from 1970 all the way to 83. Some years we had 3 cars in the race, some years 2. And it was just something that Stephanie and I it was a goal for us to get back to the speed.
Yeah, it's something that I guess I've seen, being involved with all, a number of different sort of ends of the spectrum on racing, really. The Formula One stuff is very, I'm trying to think of the best, anemic in some ways. There's no concept of fan interaction. Yeah, you see it, but it's all publicized, and it's all on social media. You've got, I mean, goodness me, you look at a Mercedes or a Red Bull, they must have 10 times the number of people working in marketing and PR than you have working on your whole project.
Right.
And then NASCAR's similar. Most teams will have more marketing and PR people than the will mechanics and engineers and the like. But IndyCar is one of those things that's always fascinated me, because to me it sort of sits in that really nice balance of these are impressive machines. These things, the first time you see them, they'll take your breath away. They'll make you sit up and take notes. But also, the drivers and the teams are very accessible and real people. And I just wish, and we talked about this on the show so many times, that the potential within in IndyCar is huge. And maybe if it did get bigger, it would lose that sort of innocence. I don't know if that's the right word.
I get exactly what you're saying.
All right. So after the Grand Prix, do you have any plans for any of the other races this season?
Well, right now, we're trying to get enough sponsorship to, we've got everything covered for the Indy Grand Prix, and we're still trying to get, more sponsorship for that. But it all depends on sponsorship and money on how many races we're able to run.
Okay. And you guys are running a Chevrolet package, is that correct?
Yes, the Chevrolet is coming tomorrow to start the engine that we got for the road course. But I was just one of the things that a lot of our sponsors and friends and, being a smaller team and people, coming down to the shop, that's one of the things they get to see up close and what they didn't realize before.
Well, we let them interact right there with us.
That's the thing that I've seen. These things, steering wheels in these race cars are phenomenal things. You often consider these guys are almost like fighter pilots than race car drivers. I mean, that was, goodness me, going back 15 years ago when I first started in Formula One. That was my job, was doing the steering wheels for the Honda team. And back then they were complicated, but by modern standards they're incredibly simplistic. And it just really sort of puts into perspective what these drivers have to do these days. You listen to them. I love listening to like the pure engineer to driver communication, just listening to them going through all the engine settings and the mode, the diff settings and the brake biases and balances that, obviously the engineers can predict and manage a lot easier than the drivers in real time. And they're fascinating things. They really are. And the more people that get to see these things and the more people that get hands-on with them, I think it's better for the sport, and I think that's where IndyCar can succeed, is these things are very, very complicated machines. And, NASCAR's going that way in terms of complexity, but the fan base resists it because they see it as evil and, against the spirit of racing. But, I really hope that IndyCar can embrace these technologies and develop them.
No, I agree.
Yeah, as I was going to say for both of you, when it comes to that, the engines, you prefer having them sent to you, like let them review explain to people how that system works, whatever you can mention on air, like with Chevy observing that kind of stuff.
Oh, Chevrolet is great to deal with. I mean, Rob Buckner's been good. Wayne, all their people there, they've helped us, and it's been 40 years or close, since I've been around the IndyCar, actual racing, running a team and being with a team daily. So, I was back around it when we built everything from our own tubs to our own uprights. And back in 79, we even designed and poured our own castings and developed our own engine, which was close to a Cosworth DFX. It was called the Oberdorfer. And so it's a lot different now because you can't build and do all that like we did back then. But the electronics and it's just so much more high tech on that end now than what it used to be. But, when we get ready to go to a race, like Monday, our engine was shipped in from a trucking company. They bring it down, we do the install. And then Chevrolet is going to be in town tomorrow. And I think they're probably going to go help somebody else fire up one engine. Then they'll come by here and we'll test all the looms and make sure everything's good to go. We'll fire it up and then we will see them on Wednesday at Sebring for our test. And they'll work right along with us, and all of the computer or scoring stands that we use now on the backside, it's set up, for your engine engineers, Chevrolet for us. And then we've got our engineers up there, and then I stand and work with them. But I mean, Dwight can measure everything from the aero at all ends of the car. You know, we have the heat sensors. It's incredible everything that you can read off these cars.
Certainly, it's truly fascinating to hear that.
Now, I have a question for you, Bill, as an old timer who's been in the sport to watch it evolve. I mean, what are your, a lot of old timers I talk to are, they're not too thrilled with what they call a spec series. Yeah, and they miss the so-called innovation and the time with that. Although, if you ask me, I think the competition right now is as good, if not better, than it ever was during the age of innovation. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the direction of the series right now and the fact that there's a common chassis and those sort of things?
You know, I've seen both ends, and I've been in the middle of both ends. You know, and I enjoy both of them. There's pluses and minuses to both. But, you know, the series right now is very competitive. You know, there's, gosh, it was close. I mean, the Speedway qualifying, and when you have two Penske cars basically in the final 5 qualifying line, you know, that means it's tough. There's a lot of people there that are capable of surprising you and winning. And, you know, I mean, Castro Neves proved that. I don't think, you know, odds in Vegas were real high on that, but it was pretty neat to see. I thought that was pretty marvelous. Yeah, I think the series is good. I think, you know, and I'm not real bright, but this is my assumption. I think, you know, if they get a few more manufacturers involved, I think it would be you know, is what they might be working towards. But I think it's all good. I mean, IndyCar, you know, Jay Fry's been good to work with. It's a good series to work with. And, you know, and we definitely want to be involved in it. And we're trying to build up our team. It takes time, a lot of work. It's not easy, or everybody would do it, you know. So, but we are enjoying it. I enjoy both ends of the spectrum, the old days, and, you know, it's completely new and different than what I'm really used to in certain ways. Because, I mean, we still run a lot of the 2000 cars for customers, and they're really 2000 cars. But just from that branch to where we're at right now, it's huge. And I think Richard could attest to that. I mean, the 15 to 20 year difference, I mean, it's huge.
Oh, it's night and day, isn't it? Oh, you know, yeah. But, and it's interesting you mentioned, you know, people do complain about these concepts of spec series, but there'd be no way that you could be within, I don't know off the top of my head the speed differential between yourselves and the Penske's at Indianapolis, but obviously it wasn't a huge amount. But if you put that as a percentage of total lap time and then compare that as a percentage to total budget, it's just a million miles apart. And if it was not a spec series, there's no way you'd be able to do that.
Oh, I agree.
I think you have to have it these days. I mean, even Formula One's going more and more spec, as much as, you know, and that is the key concept of Formula One is the, you know, an individual series, but more and more components are being offered as being spec components. And I think you've got to do it, because unless there's something differentiating that the fan can see and understand and experience, it's just a waste of money.
Oh, I agree.
Formula One teams who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a widget that nobody can ever see. I mean, what's the point? You know, why do that?
Right. I agree. I mean, the cost would be just exorbitant. It would be, you'd never be able to keep up. And plus it's not very fan friendly when two cars are just running away from everybody. You know, so yeah, what you said is exactly right. I agree with that.
All right. So, Louise, Richard, do you have any more questions before we close out the interview segment?
I think the only one more I have, if considering the short, quick turnaround, you said like near less than 40 days you had a car ready for Indianapolis. What has been the grand takeaway from being back in the IndyCar paddock on the regular? As you mentioned, it's been a long time that you worked in one or been heavily involved from a paddock perspective.
I mean, we did the turnaround, but it wasn't easy. Trust me. I mean, Roy Wilkerson, you know, put a lot of work in. Luckily, he had been around a lot of the wind tunnels, and you know, have some good people working for us. We just don't have an overabundance of people, but we have good people that are very knowledgeable. And I think that's what really helped us be as close as we were when we come out of the box. Granted, I wish we had about one more week. I think we really could have given them a heck of a shot because, even a month after the 500 was over, we were still waiting on parts and pieces that, we had ordered. And that's nobody's fault that, a lot of that's COVID and companies were slow and different things. But, it just, we'll be much more prepared next time around, and it'll be even better.
No, for sure. And I read a piece that you have full intentions of keeping RC and committed to RC for a 2022 run, which is, I think, good progress in my book to kind of give him another shot and also kind of build upon from this past month of May.
I like that kid. I'm sorry, I'm partial. That kid, he comes over and plays cards with us.
Well, that's nice.
He'll have a brewski with me and play cards and sit there and the kid. I like the kid. He's very talented, good racer, just a good all around person, and he is he's my race driver. Me and Stephanie both. That's who we want.
It's a good mindset for sure, and it's all about feeling confidence and kind of showcasing that. Most certainly, I would totally wish you the best of luck heading into Indianapolis for the Grand Prix, and also definitely in the 500 be something to keep an eye on. Indeed.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yep. No, good luck indeed. It's not, it's not easy, but it's got the dedication, you've got the right people around you, which sounds like you do. Then there's no reason why it can't be successful.
Yeah,
all right.
Well, we're all willing to work hard, and like I said, we definitely appreciate all our fans, and I mean Stephanie can speak for that.
I mentioned just we're open. You asked us when we ever leave. We don't. We live at the house at the top of the hill, and then all of our shops down the valley. So I walk to work and I walk home, and then sometimes the laundry ferry I turn into and the dish ferry. But we make it through every day, and we're still down at the shop. We started this morning at 7, and we're here now, and we're going to be successful and work hard at it. And we do appreciate everybody's support and good people.
And I really appreciate both of you joining us tonight. I know it's been a long day for you both, but it's been so wonderful talking to you. And I want to let our listeners know, Top Gun Racing, you guys have a Facebook page.
Yes.
You're on Twitter. You guys have a YouTube channel that's Grant King Racers. That there's a series of really neat videos on there, Bill, where you're interviewing different folks or showing off some of the cars in the shop there.
Right.
So
I'm sorry. There's if you go to the YouTube channel on the Grant King Racers, probably my favorite one out of there is the 15-minute trailer, which has Donald Davidson, a lot of the I always get in trouble. I say old IndyCar drivers, the more experienced IndyCar drivers. Right? I got in trouble and got chewed out by a couple of them for saying that. But some of my more experienced IndyCar drivers that I'm friends with are on there, from Johnny Parsons to Billy Englehart. And a lot of those people came through our doors, back in the day. Wally Muskowski, Steve Stapp, Jackie Howerton, Chalky, Dave Flick. Anybody pretty much came through these doors and worked here sometime or another.
all right. So make sure you check out that YouTube channel. Again, it's Grant King Racers on YouTube. There's a Grant King Racers Facebook page, Top Gun Racing Facebook page, where you can see how you can donate some money, get your name on that IndyCar before the race coming up in August. And I wish you guys the best of luck. Maybe, maybe after the race, maybe, I'll talk to you. Maybe we can get RC on the show to talk about his performance, but we'll talk about that later. But I really appreciate you guys coming on. I wish you the best. We'll let you go, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us on. We enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck. Thank you.
All right. Well, they were some wonderful folks right there, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
most indeed hear it from a different perspective, considering when I was at the month of May in Indianapolis, we knew they had it. They entered real quick. It was curious to see how they were going to fare. And when I was walking around Gasoline Alley and Pit Road, it seems like they were taking a lot of time. They wanted to make sure it cost them some practice time, but they want to make sure they have the best car ready when it mattered most. And they certainly got better as the days went on. And during Bump Day, the last row shootout, they had their best run. So it'd be curious to see how in 2022 they fare, because I think now that they have a year under their belt, 500 experience under their belt, I think they can only go up from here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, we've got about 20 minutes left of the show. So let's talk about the British Grand Prix. Some big controversy there. A little bit
Disaster.
of what I would call a racing incident, but my gosh, it's turned into an international affair. We've got even Red Bull threatening legal action, which is kind of seems excessive to me. We've had Lewis Hamilton subject to racist comments and whatnot on social media, to the point where Facebook and Twitter had to take some action. So this thing is just really nuts. So Richard, man, talk us through this.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's sort of try and go into some sort of chronological order before we get carried away here. So this was the first weekend when we had the sprint race, or sprint qualifying race, or they're not allowed to call it a race, are they? Whatever it may be. But normal qualifying that we consider to be on Saturday afternoon was now Friday afternoon, and Hamilton took sprint pole, or whatever we're calling it these days. I don't think it goes down technically as a pole on the record books, does it? I think the winner of the race gets the official pole position. So yeah, Hamilton actually got pole, and it was, apart from that, I don't think there's any real shocks. George Russell managed to get it up into P8, I think it was. Fantastic achievement by George, and again showing continual improvement there. And going into the race, Verstappen got ahead of Hamilton early in the race. And, it was a sprint race. There's no pit stops. There's no tyre changes, nothing like that. So, the Red Bull had the pace. As soon as it got ahead of the Mercedes, that was it. Hamilton just sort of held position. Perez span off, coming out of the Maggots-Beckett's Chapel section. I think it was actually in Chapel Curve, where he ran wide and actually did very well to keep it out the wall, because that could have been a nasty accident there. But he was running at the back of the grid, and they ended up retiring the car. Also running at the back of the pack, and they retired the car there to, I guess that allows them to take it out of Parc Fermé and work on it for the Sunday race. George Russell got a 3-place penalty for the most innocuous tap on Carlos Sainz at the start of the race there I think you've ever seen. Yeah, it cost Carlos a couple of spots, but he made most of them back. But it was, without sort of giving away too much on the actual race itself, it just again highlighted some of these petty and unnecessary penalties that are being handed out right now. I really didn't think what George did was particularly bad. It's the start of the race, the cars are heavy. He just missed the apex by a couple of feet, and the Sainz didn't really give him much room to work with, and they tapped. I mean, goodness me, it was, it was nothing. But anyway, 3-place penalty for George, and that sort of sums up his weekend, really. And as it has been for the last few races, great qualifying, but just sort of like treads water during the races and, drops back a couple of positions. But let's move on to Sunday, which I guess was the real talking point. And through winning the sprint race, Verstappen was on pole, Hamilton was second. And Hamilton knows that his only opportunity really to do something is to get ahead of Verstappen at the start of the race. And off the line, Verstappen got ahead, maintained that through the first complex, and going down the, I think it's Wellington Straight, isn't it? Hamilton was all over the back of Verstappen, and Verstappen did pretty well to defend, because that is an opportunity to overtake going down to Brooklands corner there. But coming onto the old start-finish straight, and into the Copse corner there, Hamilton went to the right hand side of the track, and Verstappen moved to the right to defend the line, which is perfectly entitled to do. But that's not the racing line. The racing line is what you'd call in NASCAR terms, diamonding the corner. You'd run to the very far left, you'd clip the apex, and you'd run to the left on the exit. So Verstappen, to take the racing line, moved back to the left-hand side of the track. And Hamilton, to my mind, it was what I would call a, half-hearted attempt. And then, for other sports, it's a bit like, I guess, football. If you're going to make a half-hearted tackle in football, you're the one who's going to get hurt, not the guy you're tackling. You've got to be committed. And unfortunately, it was the other way around here. And Hamilton sort of like tried to go up the inside, but didn't really. And just his car was just there in the way. You look from the onboard, Verstappen actually jinked to the left to try and avoid him, but Hamilton was in this sort of no man's land at the, in the middle of the corner, and they collided. And Verstappen had a big impact with the wall. It was 51G impact, and it was a side impact as well. It wasn't head on, it was side.
Yeah, it was a massive hit. Yeah.
It rung his bell, most definitely. Let's put it that way. And then, of course, we get the whole theatrics. Oh, my goodness me. Tom Cruise was there watching the race, and he might as well have been running Mercedes and Red Bull, because it's becoming a shambles the way they're doing this. And I think we're seeing it more and more now with the FIA to team radio being transmitted, not just purely the team radio. So Toto was defending Hamilton. Christian Horner wanted Hamilton executed on the spot. And it all got a little bit out of hand. And what really annoyed me was how Toto Wolff was, and the team bosses are allowed to go and lobby the stewards while the stewards are making a decision. I think that's completely wrong. The stewards should be completely impartial, should be locked away, no access to the teams, no communication, and just allowed to make a decision purely on data and facts available to them, not to say no lobbying from the team principals, because these guys have a lot of clout, when they're in these positions. So I thought that was wrong, that they were allowed to do that. Now, the hand down for Hamilton was a 10-second penalty, and which he served in his pit stop. And at the time, he was running second behind Leclerc. Leclerc managed to get past early in the or at this point where Hamilton and Verstappen collided. Now, they said that the race was stopped while Verstappen was sort of taken to the medical center, and the tire barriers were rebuilt. And on the restart, Leclerc held the lead, and it was all pretty much status quo as you were. And then towards the end of the race, Hamilton was just, on a charge. He had that time gap there, and he, the guy's, arguably one of the best racers that ever lived, and there is certainly, the Mercedes is certainly a more capable car than the Ferrari at the moment. And he was able to pass Leclerc with a couple of laps to go. Now, Hamilton passed Leclerc exactly the same corner that he had the contact with Verstappen. And if you look at, there is some overhead photos circling, and Leclerc and Verstappen are probably in identical parts of the track. And if anything, Leclerc is actually closer to the apex than Verstappen is. Now, in Leclerc's instance, Hamilton is actually on the apex curve at Copse. Whereas, when he collided with Verstappen, he was probably 3/4 of a car width away from the apex. And even with Leclerc being where he was, he still ran wide on the exit of the corner. And, so if Hamilton and Verstappen hadn't made contact, Verstappen would have gone off the track. He would have been way over the runoff curbs and almost into the gravel there. So, Hamilton got the job done, won the race. And, I was surprised by Hamilton's reaction. Hamilton would have known that Verstappen was at hospital having checkups. Now, pretty certain there was nothing majorly wrong, but still, you have been involved in an incident with one of your competitors. Yes, a rival, but still a competitor, which you respect. They've always showed respect for each other. And this guy's in hospital, and you're stood there jumping around, doing all this sort of stuff. And yeah, it's his home race in front of 100,000 people. I get that. But it certainly wouldn't have hurt to show a little bit of humility in that set of circumstances. Now, I personally would apportion the majority of the blame on Hamilton, but I guess difficult blame. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a racing incident. You know, there was no there's no intent. You know, this wasn't like Senna and Prost back in the day, you know, where one driver deliberately drove into another. You know, Hamilton made a half-hearted move, which didn't come off. I think if Hamilton had actually gone for the apex on that corner and actually really tried to stick it in there deep, he would have made the move and got ahead. But it was very strange. It was just a sort of almost like he was like trying to fake it and just put the car there and see what Verstappen did. Verstappen's going to shut the doors. Anybody would, you know, Hamilton would have done the same thing. So I think it was bad judgment on Hamilton's fault. I don't think it was any intent. I don't think it was malicious. I don't think it was deliberate. Excuse me. But, you know, and he got the penalty, which is justified, you know. Unfortunately, you could argue that he didn't get the outcome in that he still won the race. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, I don't think you can imply a harsh penalty for that. And as Michael Massey said, the race director, you know, penalties are not derived by or not determined by the outcome. Penalties are derived by the actual action. So if you could have done this at Vale, the slowest corner on the track, or you could have done it at Stowe, the fastest corner on the track. So, you know, you can't differentiate that. Now, maybe you should. Maybe you could say, well, you know, that was stupid of Hamilton to do that there because you don't have small accidents in that corner. You know, if you go off there, you have a big one. And maybe that was it. You know, maybe that was an issue that he should have looked at that. I don't know. That's not necessarily my call there. But I think that one of the really sad things that came out of this, and Frank, you mentioned it earlier, is some of the abuse that Hamilton received post-race in social media. And there's certain elements of society and certain elements of the media which question some of these actions that, you know, the drivers, especially Hamilton, has taken in terms of their protests, for want of a better word. And, you know, unfortunately, the reaction that he saw 100% justifies the actions that were being taken, that they take to try and highlight these issues. You know, there is zero place for this in society. And as sports and athletes, they do have a very prominent role to play in society. And to see this and the way they were treated was absolutely disgraceful. And, you know, I hope this is going to do something to stop it, but it won't. You know, unfortunately, that's society we live in these days. And
I mean, I think that's a huge, you know, problem with social media is that everybody has a voice and you can be pretty anonymous behind your keyboard and you can get pretty nasty. But I mean, but people are going, you know, they're going to a place there's no need to, you know.
Exactly. What difference does it make?
Exactly. What difference does it make? Yeah. If you disagree with Lewis's actions on the track, talk about Lewis's actions on the track.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do. Yeah. Has nothing to do with Lewis's skin color or ethnicity 100%, or nationality. 100%. Exactly.
Now, one thing that, you know, I on a more of a sporting note, one thing that is really starting to irritate me is I'm going to be careful how I'll phrase this, maybe, the arrogance that Mercedes show. It's just, they don't need to do this. How many times have we seen from Mercedes a press release where, like, oh, well, we were 2 laps away from not finishing the race and having to retire. This was about to happen, and that was about to happen, and this was about to go wrong. You know, they came up with this whole thing of, oh, well, you know, if the red flag hadn't happened after Lewis and Max came together, we would have had to retire Hamilton's car because of the damage. Well, they didn't show that on TV. All they showed on TV was the taping up one of the tire temperature camera that's mounted on the inside end plate of the front wing. Now, if that's going to cause you to retire from the race, you've got bigger problems than most of the other teams. But it's just this drama that they try to create, which just doesn't need to be created. And it's just like they're trying to turn it into, a reality TV show almost. And it's just pathetic. It really is. It just leaves a nasty taste in the mouth because they're trying to make it. They can have Mercedes can have a 1-2, win by 30 seconds. And in their race debrief, it's like, oh, that was a close call. No, it wasn't. You had that under control. You were managing the race perfectly. Don't come up with that crap. Just acknowledge that you have one of the best teams out there and that you're good at what you do. Don't create stuff that doesn't need to be created. It's ridiculous. It really is.
It really is. So, well, good rundown, Richard. So, at the end of the day, Lewis taking the win and Max walking away with 0 points tightens up the championship battle.
No, hang on. Sorry, your stat of the week.
Stat of the week
is the only driver in Formula One history to score a point and not complete a lap of a race. He scored 3 points for winning the sprint race, but didn't complete a lap of the race. So he scored 3 points from the weekend, but didn't complete a lap during the Grand Prix, technically.
There you go.
So he did. There you go. Sorry, moving on.
That's a stat that wouldn't have been possible before the sprint race.
Exactly.
I'll say about the British Grand Prix, disaster for, as I mentioned, for Red Bull Racing, because now the constructors is completely tightened up. Perez could not move his way towards the field. The red flag was supposed to help him. It barely did anything. But the only thing he was able to do is stop Mercedes getting that extra bonus point for fastest lap.
Yeah, Perez has had a couple of good weeks, hasn't he? And then something just didn't click at Silverstone. He was off all weekend. And
the problem for Perez at Silverstone was the fact that people kept mistaking him for Tom Cruise, which just totally wrecked his concentration.
Or the fact that he didn't drove Silverstone at all last year.
Yeah.
I have the same. I have the same problem with the Tom Cruise lookalike.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, but in all seriousness, they're getting up to this summer break, and Perez has won in Azerbaijan, which was right place, right time. But I wonder if they're not going to be looking at Gasly or even George Russell if Mercedes procrastinate too long. Because Perez he's had a couple of good races, but so did Alex Albon. Is Perez a massive step up? I don't know. If you have an option to put a Gasly in there who's matured a lot in the last 2 or 3 years, won a race in the same way that Perez did, had probably the same number of podiums. I think Perez is going to be looking over his shoulder, and I think he needs a good run in between now and the summer break.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we only got a few minutes left, so let's talk about this NASCAR race because we had our 13th different winner of the year, being Mr. Eric Almirola, who was the first guy in a Stewart-Haas car to win this year. Yeah, it wasn't Harvick. So, but this, with 4 races before the end of the regular season, 13 winners, 3 more winners, and if one of them isn't Harvick, he's out of the playoffs.
Yeah, but Almirola could still be in trouble.
He could still drop below top 38 points. Yeah.
No, not just that, but depending if Denny Hamlin wins this regular season championship, which I still stand at, all Hamlin needs is just 2 repeat winners, and he'll be in by points, no matter if he wins the regular season title or not. That's what I was trying to explain on Twitter. We got a couple people that I will not name names of one particular that I'm in dire with. That's like, yeah, I'm talking about him points, not regular season champion Denny Hamlin, because I know the regular season gets in no matter what.
Yeah, which is interesting. He could theoretically, if he maintains the points lead, right, and we have 3 more winners, he'd bump a race winner out.
Yeah.
But if he drops to, say, Kyle Larson takes the points lead, which could certainly happen. Denny could be right there near the top of the points and not make the chase based on if they have 13 winners or 3 more winners rather. So yeah, it's all kind of I mean, on the outset, Hamlin is actually quite safe, but there are a couple of weird circumstances that could happen that could knock him out.
Yeah, all you just need is 2 repeat winners, and he'll be safely in no matter what.
Absolutely, yeah. So he needs to root for Kyle Busch or Kyle Larson
or Truex because we got road courses.
You know what Hamlin could do? He could just win a damn race. I'm just throwing that out there. That would
Imagine
work.
that.
That would work too.
Yeah, that'll certainly help. But the race had a slew of problems at the very beginning that, as people know by now, the race ended 8 laps short because of the darkness due to the near 2 hour red flag, which even if whether or not you started the race at 10 a.m. Eastern or 3 p.m., you still are going to have some delays because of what turn number 1 having that little problem with trying to dry up. The term is not clicking for me right now. The sewage, I think it was, or drainage. So either or, you probably you've been better off. Weepers. Thank you.
Right.
And then when they dropped the green flag, I knew it's like, wait a minute, they're actually gonna run this thing. There were some drops in the camera lens, like, okay, maybe this looks gonna be deceiving. And no, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., their shot of winning were gone on lap 6 because the rain poured in. Kyle Busch was done. He was angry at the officials flipping him off, running over the pace car to the point they had to get a backup pace car out. Truex was able to rally back to get a top 20 out of that ordeal without a bumper necessarily, or a little bit of the bumper. It shows you how strong the car was, but Almirola was definitely a right place, right time winner. First non-super speedway win of his career in the Cup level, and for a grand while as well across the national touring board. But this is the kind of run that's probably going to keep him around another year in that 10 car, because there were talks on social media. It's like they're saying, well, Almirola's out. They don't see Almirola in that 10 car. Well, a win could change that no matter the circumstances, but time will ultimately tell. Penske's had a strong race. Penske's probably were the best all-around cars. Logano had to overcome a 2-lap penalty for fixing a safety issue under the red flag and also during the yellow. He rallied back. Keselowski, who's now officially a Roush driver in 2022, co-owner of that. We'll talk about this some other time. They had great runs, but at the end of the day, it's really shuffled the whole entire playoff. The last 2 weeks with Kurt Busch and Almirola winning.
Yes, it really has changed the landscape of the playoffs. So, and we will have plenty of time to discuss that next week, because there'll be no major racing this coming weekend with the Olympics going on. So next week we could delve into all those chase things, but this week we are out of time. So I want to thank you, Louise, and I want to thank you, Richard, and I want to thank our guests, Stephanie and Bill Throckmorton, for coming on. And again, look them up on social media, Top Gun Racing. And I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and Google Podcast. And I want to thank you folks that listen to us. But until next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.